Hello and good day, everyone. So, for this presentation, we will be discussing the timeline of the historical development of digital libraries.
For the outline of the presentation, we will have the first introduction, the definition of digital libraries. Second, the timeline of the historical background of digital libraries, which contain dates, important events, and facts. Lastly, the conclusion at the end of the presentation.
Moving on, let us define what are digital libraries. Digital libraries are simply a collection of the digital objects rather than the physical ones. They might include text, images, audio, or videos stored in electronic formats. What makes it a library as opposed to just a hard drive is that it includes a means for organizing, storing, and retrieving the media. Digital libraries can be focused on one subject or contain a vast array of materials according to Collier 2016.
Next, here is the timeline of the historical development of digital libraries. In 1881, J.S. Billings, who is the director of what has to become the National Library of Medicine, suggested to Herman Hollerith that a mechanical system based on cards can be used to tabulate the census. Hollerith developed a punch card system used within the 1890 census. Meanwhile, in 1939, Bomba is a highly specific electromechanical device which successfully decodes German, Luftwaffe, and Navy messages for the Allies. A committee at the U.S. National Archives determines that federal agencies can determine whether records stored in punch cards have historical value and should be preserved. Following this decision, few agencies retain any punch card records for historical purposes. Next.
By 1945, Vannevar Bush created a device in which an individual stores all his books, records, and communications. So in which it is mechanized so that it may be consulted with exceeding speed and flexibility. Bush also released an article named As We May Think and later called this system the Mimic System. In 1950, the U.S. Federal Records Act of 1950 expanded the definition of a record to include machine-readable materials. By the year 1955, IBM introduces RAMAC, or the Random Access Method of Accounting and Control, which is the first commercial disk drive. It used 50 hefty aluminum disks, stored 5 MB, occupied the space of 2 refrigerators, and weighed a ton. Secondly, the ENIAC or the ENIAC is turned off for the last time. It is estimated to have done more arithmetic than the entire human race had done prior to 1945.
In 1965, Gordon Moore established the Moore's law, which correctly predicts that the number of transistors or microprocessors will double approximately every 18 months. It was the time also that the PDP-8 is the world's first mass-produced microcomputer. Meanwhile, published a book named The Library of the Future, which talks about how computers could provide an automated library with simultaneous remote use by many different people through access to common database. By 1968, microcomputers is the first used in print in a Mark Code 500 general note. In that same year, U.S. libraries began using machine-readable catalog or MARC records in the year 1969. General Markup Language is introduced. The first ARPANET node is installed at UCLA Network Measurement Center, and the first request for comments produced to standardize the transfer of information across the ARPA network. Next.
Next, in 1971, the 8th floppy disk appears. Bell Labs patented the Unix time-sharing system first edition. The Ohio College Library Center introduced online shared cataloging system for libraries. The Project Gutenberg begins to text and code public domain and hope that it will be freely reproduced and distributed. The first ARPANET network email message is transmitted and the file transfer protocol is first proposed. 2 years later, 1973, Xerox Alto is the first personal computer with a built-in mouse and a graphical user interface or GUI. The first ARPANET nodes appear in Europe and the Ethernet cable. Bob Metcalf invented Ethernet, which is a local area network technology.
In the year 1980, digital faxes using uniform data standards appear. The Telenet protocol is specified allowing command and login sessions within host Laserdisc. Laserdisc began to develop laser rot due to oxidation of the aluminum layer. Fortran 77 programming language is created. By 1982, Sony and Philips introduced the first CD player. Compact Disc Digital Audio, or CDDA, is introduced to the market jointly by Philips and Sony. The National Information Systems Task Force, or NISTF, develops the first two formally recognized archival description standards in the US: NISTF Data Elements Dictionary and the IRSA Mark AMC. Last, the Commodore 64 is sold with 64 KB of RAM and Microsoft Basic.
By 1991, the ePrint archive or ArcSiv, born as experimental means for making scientific communication more effective and economic. It is a requirement mostly expressed by the physicist community. In 1995, the University of Michigan Digital Library focuses on creating a digital library architecture based on the notion of software quote and unquote agents. Also, the European Research Consortium for Informatics and Mathematics asked to join the Network Computer Science Technical Report Library or NCSTRL network. This gave birth to ETRDL. Meanwhile, the Alexandria Digital Library Project builds an online distributed digital library for georeferencing of information, maps, aerial photographs, satellite imagery, and catalog records, and on supporting geographically defined queries.
By next, the Standard Digital Library Project focused on addressing aspects of interoperability over heterogeneous services and collection via the Infobus protocol, which provides uniform way to access a variety of service and information sources through the translators. Furthermore, the Infomedia Digital Video Library focused on establishing a larger online digital video collection with full content and knowledge-based search capabilities and retrieval. Lastly, Interspace focused on building large collection of technical engineering and physics literature that can be searched effectively across multiple indexes with a single interface.
The Electronic Thesis and Dissertations or ETD's pilot project started in 1996. It archives cognitive sciences papers and of research papers in economics. The Network Digital Library of Thesis and Dissertations or NDLTD it is an international organization. It is still operational, which registers and keeps track of the ETDs. During that year, the Californian Environmental Digital Library focused on developing the technologies to access large, distributed collections of photographs, satellite images, videos, maps, documents, and quote and unquote multivalent documents and to support work-centered digital information services.
By 1998, European national libraries from the network European POSIT Library to maintain and preserve born digital objects within the library system. The Time and Bits Managing Digital Continuously meeting is held at the Getty Center to discuss the future use of digital technologies. The OCLC Web Characterization Project begins conducting an annual web sample to analyze trends in size and content. The project ended in 2003. MPEG-4 compression standard is released. A collaboration between the universities of Leeds, Cambridge, and Oxford forms the CEDARS project, whose broad objective is to explore and raise awareness of digital preservation issues. Last, the National Archives and Records Administration Electronic Records Archives projects begins. Next.
In 2000, the Delos Working Group and Delos Thematic Network, its main objective is to advance state of the art in the field of digital libraries. The SchoolNet aims to extend role by providing services to support remote communication and collaboration among scholars. Furthermore, Cyclades conceived to realize an open collaborative virtual archive service environment supporting both single scholars as well as scholarly communities in carrying out their work. For Artiste, an integrated art analysis and navigation environment focused on giving providers, publishers, distributors, and end users of art images the information as well as the multimedia information market as a whole, more efficient system for storing, classifying, linking, matching, and retrieving art images.
By the year 2001, the Open Archive Protocol for Metadata Harvesting, a simple protocol made by 6 protocol requests and responses, and because of its simplicity and relatively low cost of adoption, it is so diffuse as to become a sort of de facto standard solution. The European Library Project aims to investigate and the feasibility of establishing a new pan-European service which would ultimately give access to the combined resources of the national libraries of Europe, while the National Science Digital Library, funded by the National Science Year Foundation, aim to provide organized access to high-quality resources and tools that support innovations in teaching and learning at all levels of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education for the year 2003. The digital academic repositories. This was a joint initiative by Dutch universities, national universities of the Netherlands, and other Dutch organizations. It, its aim was to store the digital outcome of all Dutch research in common network and institutional repositories in order to facilitate its dissemination. Next.
And for 2004, the European Chronicles Online was intended to develop new models for intelligent audiovisual content-based searching and film sequence retrieval, new video abstracting tools, and user interfaces specifically tailored to the new functionality. The Collaboratory for Annotation, Indexing, and Retrieval of Digitized Historical Archive Material, or COLLATE, focused on the development of a collaborative work environment for archives, researchers, and end users, focused on historic film documentation, including censorship files, photos, and film fragments, in which users take an active role in evaluating sources and adding valuable information. TEL or TEL finished in 2004 and now delivers a web service for accessing the combined resources like books, magazines, journals, etc., both digital and non-digital, of the 45 national libraries of Europe. The 5SL, 5SL Graph, and 5S Gen are frameworks for modeling and semi-automatically customizing digital library services.
The year 2005 is where the initiatives reasonably considered as substantial digital libraries, where the Digital Libraries Initiative in the US, while the national initiatives, examples of these are eLib in UK and the EU funded projects including a dedicated network of excellence. Delos have categorized the European census.
Next, for the year 2007, the School of Information and Library Science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill hosts the first Dig Seeker International Symposium on Digital Curation. The Cyber Infrastructure Vision for 21st Century Discovery Report Cover NSF implements the Office of Cyber Infrastructure, which publishes the Cyber Infrastructure Vision for 21st Century Discovery Report. The Digital Preservation Repository Certification Task Force published the Trustworthy Repositories Audit and Certification or TRAC criteria and checklist in PDF format. The Europeana, originally known as European Digital Library Network, it is the result of a partnership of 100 representatives of heritage and knowledge organizations and IT experts from throughout Europe. The objective is to provide access to Europe's cultural and scientific heritage through a cross-domain portal. The goal is to realize a system serving very different type of users, while the Delos Digital Library Reference Model is a formal and conceptual framework describing the characteristics of the digital library domain. In 2008, the Delos Digital Library Management System, or Delos DLMS, is to integrate various digital library services developed by Delos members into a single working system. The D4 Science in E-Infrastructure support the dynamic construction and maintenance of digital libraries, which in the context of this project are called virtual research environments. Virtual research environments are tailored to specific needs of a scientific scenario, can be created and maintained for the time they are required, and dismissed when the community does not need them anymore.
The following year, in 2009, the World Digital Library is launched. The NDIIPB, or the National Digital Information Infrastructure of Preservation Program, launches a pilot program to test cloud technologies for preserving digital content using DuraCloud. Providers of eSpace and Fedora decided to create a new organization, DuraSpace, in May of 2009. The goal to yield leadership and innovation in open source technologies for global communities who manage, preserve, and provide access to digital content. It will focus on supporting existing communities and will also engage a larger and more diverse group of stakeholders in support of its not for profit mission.
By 2010, first National Preservation Week is celebrated. Sponsors include the Library of Congress, Society of American Archivists, and Association for Library Collections and Technical Services, and Institute of Museum and Library Services, among others.
And lastly, by the year 2013, the Digital Public Library of America is launched. Now, onto the conclusion. Most of the time, the users upon granted access can access any information it operates. Very similarly to physical book library, digital libraries are usually much more secure, and information stored there is typically not available to the public and is most commonly owned by private institutions that restrict accesses.
And according to Candela Castelli Pagano 2011, digital libraries are undergoing a continuously evolving process, influencing all sectors where knowledge has to be created, stored, transmitted, and used. This chapter has traced the history of digital library evolution through its fundamental steps, driven by how digital libraries could newly be conceived in connection with the availability of new technologies and the changing needs of the community of library users. So here are the references that we use in our presentation. That is all for our presentation regarding the timeline of the historical background of digital libraries, and I hope that you learned something in our presentation. Once again, thank you for watching and listening to our presentation, and have a good day ahead of us.
Thank you all.